Then there was what happened to Jesse Single, which I found disgusting. I didn't know about that until at some point this year. I would say earlier this year.
With the trans stuff? Jesse's been on the show before. Yeah, he's done great.
Jesse Single is a good faith, I think, critical thinker. I'm subscribed to Blocked and Reported. I have listened to endless podcast episodes from Blocked and Reported. I haven't seen anything from Jesse Single that communicates to me that he is a transphobe, that he is a bad person. He did straight news reporting on basically what, you know, some of the risks could be when it comes to transitioning literal kids with puberty blockers and then cross-sex hormones. And through his reporting, which I'm very sad to say I didn't really come across until this year, I learned that I was wrong about a bunch of other things, right? So for instance, it is a lie that puberty blockers are reversible. In some cases, they are not, and they can cause irreparable harm.
Hey guys, I wanted to go on here and talk about something that's been bothering me for the past couple days. And that is the Young Turks and Anna and Cenk's transition to transphobia. For those of you who don't know, TYT is a news/opinion network on YouTube that purports itself to be the home of progressives. And a couple months ago, one of their primary hosts, Anna Kasparian, tweeted that she took umbrage with the terms birthing person or people with uterus. And there was a lot of backlash. People were, including people from within their own company and their, supposed friends, tried to call them in and educate them. And they doubled and tripled down, got mad, blamed the trans rights activists, act like we're irrational. And now they are starting to definitely turn on the trans community. They are attacking trans athletes in sports all the time. And, a lot of people on Twitter were surprised by this, and I'm not. For a long time, they tried to talk the talk on being allies, but you could tell from watching that they never bothered to educate themselves or do their own research on the science of transitioning, on the stories they were talking about. They never had a full-time trans host on the network. And that's the thing, trans issues are in the news every single day in America. That's just not responsible journalism.
All right, guys, so in this continuation of the leftist civil war, we got to talk about Anna Kasparian's red pill, and I'm using that term very lightly here. That's just the best way for me to describe it. Her red pill transformation. A leftist, a far leftist, who is seeing the excess evils of the left and is slowly but surely backing away from the extremism that is very, very, very prevalent on the left. I talk about every single day how extreme these people are. Anna Kasparian is seeing it for her own eyes, whether it comes to climate, crime, race, gender, all of these issues. Anna Kasparian is backing away from the leftist narrative because she realizes that the leftist narrative is extreme and out of control. Okay, and she recently did this interview with Sitch and Adam, who I believe are liberals. Okay, they're disaffected liberals, right? And she's gonna drop some truth bombs here about a few stories that the left really, really, really tried hard to hang on to in regards to their lies and trying to paint a narrative that just simply was not there. Like, for example, the Kyle Rittenhouse story. Okay, Anna, during this interview, is going to admit that the leftist media, lied about the Kyle Rittenhouse story and what actually happened. Take a look.
And so, okay, with the Rittenhouse story, I was going to cover the trial and I just needed to go back and just really, really look at all of the details and remember all the details. So when I do the story, I get the facts right. And then as I'm doing that, I come across a New York Times video. And this was a really, really well done video that they posted on YouTube that showed you in slow motion, how everything transpired that night. Mm-hmm. And once you see it for yourself, it's really, really difficult to argue that in those moments, he was not acting in self-defense. And right. This is an area where, Cenk and I disagree because, if someone's hitting you over the head with a skateboard, that could kill you, And so, Cenk is he's a strong-minded person and he's not one to back down from a fight. So in his mind, someone confronts you with a skateboard, he doesn't see it as a threat, but I do. And Rittenhouse is not a big burly guy who can like defend himself against someone who's like hitting him over the head with a skateboard as he's lying on his back. So once I saw all those details, first of all, I had to convey them to my audience and be honest about what the reality was. The other thing was, you know, there was a lot of misreporting about how Kyle Rittenhouse was in possession of an illegal weapon and that he crossed state lines with that illegal weapon. Okay? Yep. So that was a lie. And it's not a lie that I just made up in my mind, right? That was how it was reported initially, which is why I would mention the state lines, but not because, oh, how dare he cross state lines? Anyone in this country has the right to cross state lines. It was because it was reported that he was in possession of an illegal gun, and he traveled across state lines with an illegal gun, which is a serious charge. But it turned out that he did not travel across state lines with that weapon.
Yeah, he didn't do that. Yeah, the weapon was in the area already. Yeah.
Exactly. He bought it from a friend when he was already in Wisconsin.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Anna Kasparian taking the red pill on Kyle Rittenhouse, okay? Admitting that news outlets like hers, okay, got it wrong, okay? Despite the fact that from the very beginning, everybody could clearly see that was self-defense. Again, it's pretty fascinating because she's openly kind of criticizing her own network, okay, for getting stories wrong. And that extends to not just the Kyle Rittenhouse story, but also the City Park Karen story, or the City Bike Karen story, in which you had Rashad Richey, the #1 race hustler on TYT, getting that story wrong. And Anna Kasparian, before in the past, actually kind of low-key took a jab at him for getting that story wrong and targeting white women who act up in public, calling them Karens, okay? And now she's going to take another shot at Rashad Richey and discuss Rashad Richey getting the story wrong in more detail. And again, I find this to be pretty fascinating. Take a look.
I've learned to be better about, first of all, the sources I trust. I make an effort to just be cognizant of the filter bubbles we all exist in, the filter bubbles I exist in. And I've broken through that bubble a little bit to, you know, look at other sources that I typically wouldn't have looked at. And then the other thing that I do now is I just wait. You know, I think the story involving the so-called City Bike Karen is a good example of that. The main show, because TYT consists of many different shows, right? The show that I'm the executive producer and host of is the main flagship show, The Young Turks. And prior to that story breaking, I had a meeting with my team and I was like, listen, I don't want you guys pitching stories about random individuals in the country who are caught in an out of context video allegedly behaving badly. I think these stories are divisive. I don't think we usually have the full details before we talk about these stories. And honestly, at the end of the day, engaging in these witch hunts is actually causing more division and hate in the country than anything else. So like, if there's a story that's particularly like jarring and you guys really do want to cover it, that's fine, but just understand that we are going to wait. Like, we are not in the business of breaking news. I don't give a shit about being the first in reporting the story or whatever. I want to make sure that when we do, we actually report it correctly and we don't have egg on our face later. Now, there are a bunch of other shows on the network that I have no say over, that I have no control over, who, you know, inaccurately reported on it and had to issue retractions. They had to take videos down and all that stuff. And I just think that was a teachable moment, hopefully a teachable moment for everyone in the company. But certainly, you know, this is an ongoing conversation I have with my team. And luckily, I don't know how I did it. I feel like I found unicorn producers because they're really smart, super open-minded.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. That is Anna Kasparian once again taking a low-key shot at Rashad Richey's show. So apparently TYT is divided into different, I guess, shows or whatever. And I guess those shows have different teams. And those teams have some sort of, I guess, autonomy in regards to how they cover stories. And that has been a conversation within the network in regards to how Rashad Richey is basically covering these stories that involve these videos of white women allegedly acting up in public out of context. And then he's running with the story trying to paint some type of racial narrative, okay, because some black person cried racism, okay? He sides with people who clearly are untrustworthy, and he has been wrong so many different times. Okay, again, I can think of at least 3 or 4 stories off the top of my head where Rashad Richey has just been wrong. Okay, he pulled a race card, like for example, on the Little League baseball players who had cotton in their hair or filling from a stuffed animal in their hair. And Rashad Richey tried to say that, well, the white kids were picking cotton out of the black kids' hair, and that was somehow racist, right? And offensive. Okay, this is what Rashad Richey said. Okay, this is what he claimed, right? He got the story wrong about the girl that graduated from college and ended up snatching the mic from the white woman that was officiating the graduation because she felt like the white woman didn't let her say enough, okay? And it's like, well, if you go back and you look at the other footage, the white woman actually did let the other students say their names and more stuff that apparently they weren't supposed to say. Okay, so again, this happens time and time again. Okay, and it's just funny to me to see Anna Kasparian calling out her colleague, who is, again, he's making money basically pushing hate and division, like overtly. Okay, just trying to push hate and division. Particularly in the direction of white people, right? And more particularly, again, white women, which is something that Anna Kasparian, again, talked about in this interview, the overt attacks against white people that she sees as, again, racist divisive, and also not taking this country to a place where race relations are better, despite these stated objectives from the left, which is to defeat racism and to end racism. They're actually causing more racism.
I just feel like, what are we doing here? We're taking steps backwards. Why are we doing this?
Also, and I'm not sure, like, that, teaching kids, like, oh, this kid is privileged over you. I'm not sure the psychological effects that's going to have necessarily on the children. And it's kind of
but also, like, the bullying that commonly takes place on campuses across the country. I mean, you're providing more fodder for that.
Yes,
I don't think
right. Yeah, exactly.
I don't think that's really a helpful way to talk about, race dynamics in the country. I don't know. I experienced none of that when I was in public school. And I feel pretty lucky that I grew up. Look, it wasn't perfect, but I do feel lucky that I grew up in the 90s, because that was probably the peak of the attempts to live in a colorblind society. And I just feel like race relations were better then.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously not perfect, but what I'm experiencing now is, again, incredibly divisive. And I don't like the generalizations about, like white women, white people in general, the fact that, every institution, racism is deeply ingrained in every institution. We've got to burn it all down. And it's like, what are you guys doing right now? Like, what are you really doing, and what are you really advocating for?
Yeah. And it's like, I agree that there's always messaging problems on both sides, when, the right says, like, the CRT and everything. And it's like, well, yeah, they're not, reading Kimberly Crenshaw papers necessarily in second grade, but there'll be some specific element. And yeah, it'd probably be better if they were specific and say, oh, they're doing privilege walks, or they're talking about how there's inherent racism built into white society, or they're saying that, we want to deconstruct whiteness. There was some school, I forget where this was, whereas like in elementary school or middle school, they had a book that was like, it had a contract with devil horns that said, don't shake hands with the contract of whiteness or something like absurd like this. And so, I mean, it's happening all across, it was happening, like elements of it were happening across the country. And the problem is, like, at the same token that, the right's too overbroad maybe with saying everything CRT or being broad, like the left had kind of just the exact opposite, or not even the left really, the mainstream media had the kind of exact opposite approach where they're saying, oh, none of this is happening. This is all like a fantasy. This is all a fantasy concocted by racists because they don't want to teach about slavery. They don't want to teach about Black history in America.
Right.
It's like, that's clearly not what they're talking, or at least I don't think that's clearly what's happening in these situations.
Right. I bought into that narrative, hook, line, and sinker, right? Like the narrative of they want to erase any curriculum, any teachings about racism, about slavery, about the Jim Crow era. And I feel like a sucker, right? I just do. And yeah. And I don't know. Like, look, I can't control others. All I can do is control my own behavior. And so I've been kind of thinking of things through that lens.
Yeah. So again, I find this interview to be extremely, extremely, extremely fascinating. And the reason why is because it basically confirms that I'm not a crazy person, right? Because sometimes with the direction that this country is going in, I do feel like I'm a crazy person. Where I'm like, okay, is anybody else seeing the overt, anti-white racism that's happening in this country? Okay, is it just me, or is it something that other people are saying? There's no way that progressives and liberals are not seeing the brainwashing that is happening from the left, okay? And again, it's just very refreshing to see Anna Kasparian admit that, yeah, like, this stuff is being pushed in schools, okay? Not necessarily CRT in regards to the college curriculum or whatever, but you are having some of this stuff pushed in schools, and the pushback from the right is legitimate in the sense that, no, we're not trying to ban the teaching of slavery or teaching about race or whatever in school in regards to what happened, the history of this country. No, people are just saying, look, we don't want our kids being indoctrinated with this ideology that makes kids think that white people are bad and dangerous. Which, again, Anna Kasparian admits is something that the left is trying to push, right? They're pushing misinformation about what the right's intentions are when it comes to this conversation on race, okay? That, hey, everybody on the right is not some type of racist bigot, okay, that hates black people and brown people and gay people, whatever. There are legitimate arguments coming from the right that are not being taken in good faith by the left because they're just smeared as racist or sexist or bigot or transphobic or whatever. And that is something that she said in this conversation that, again, it really did make me feel, like, hey, I'm not crazy, that I know that other people see this stuff. I'm not the only one seeing it. Or put it this way, conservatives aren't the only people seeing this stuff. The left is out of control, right? The left is out of control, right? When they're losing progressives like Anna Kasparian, these people that went too far. And quite honestly, I mean, this shift that you're saying, she's not the only person that feels like this, right? She is not the only person that feels like this. There are a lot of people that feels like this that are even progressive, that are like, you know what? This side is just it's too much, right? It's too much. Okay, you can't disagree with these people without being smeared as some type of bigot, right? And Anna Kasparian, has been a victim of that, and now she's speaking out about it. It kind of sucks that it's just 2023, and she's realizing that after participating in this for years, okay, being guilty of pushing this same type of hate and division that she's now a victim of. Yeah, I mean, it sucks that it took her this long to realize it, but I guess, better late than never, right? But never late is better, right? So, I don't know. I just found that conversation to be fascinating. It's good to see her politically involved on these issues and to see the truth, right? To see the truth of the matter when it comes to these stories and just how dishonest her side of the aisle can be when it comes to reporting, when it comes to race, when it comes to any of these conversations that, quite honestly, they don't really want to have a real conversation on. They don't want to have their ideas challenged because, again, they know that in the court of public opinion, their ideas can't really stand. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective.